Hey folks, it's Yannick Gwizdala. It's the Yannick Gwizdala podcast. This episode started life as a newsletter, a blog post on my Substack. If you're not a member of that, it's linked below in the description of the video. Totally free to sign up. And occasionally I write little pieces about things that mean something to me, something that I've connected with, often musically. And this is absolutely the case with this post. And it was kind of the five of my favorite bass player, band leader songs and albums that really had a massive impact on me, on my career, on my playing, on my writing. And yeah, it was a post, and I embedded the tracks for people to listen to. I featured Gary Willis and Charlie Haydn and Victor Wooten, John Patitucci, Stanley Clarke, some real heroes of the bass world. And I thought, you know what, I'd actually like to talk about this. I'd actually like to share more about it, go deeper into what these songs mean to me, play the songs to you, and just talk a little bit deeper about each of them. So that's what we're going to do. Just fresh back off the road. We had our East Coast Vital Information Tour. Awesome to see a lot of you out there. It was super fun. Had some amazing shows. It is definitely good to be back. Things are absolutely insane here. We just finished mixing the first album that's going to come out this year, and we'll then go immediately into mixing the bass duet album with Daniele Camada, which will come out end of the summer or beginning of the fall, something like that. It is almost 4th of July here, Independence Day, huge holiday here in the US, and we do this very rarely, but we are doing it this weekend. I just picked this weekend completely randomly. We're doing a massive sale at the store. Especially if you're buying physical media, if you're buying physical books like this, Chordal Harmony, 10-Minute Manual, 251, I can't like any of the physical books, because we have free shipping over a certain threshold, and we're doing 30% off of any order over $80. So you could literally buy like $200 worth of physical books, get free shipping, and it would only cost $140. You get $60 off. So that's what we're doing this weekend. It's all live. It's all automatic. You don't need a code or anything. The discount is added automatically at the checkout. The store is linked below, and it really includes everything: the Line 6 presets, the vinyl, the CDs, the physical books, the digital books, and all of the other discounts work with that as well. So go nuts, take advantage of it. It is live now, and I think it's set to end midnight on Sunday. It's just a few days for our Independence Day, 4th of July, big US-centric sale at the store. So go take advantage of it. It's all linked below. And let's get into playing some of these songs. It's something I never do on the podcast. I never play other people's music. You immediately get demonetized and all that stuff. And it's not so much the demonetization that bothers me. It's actually some record labels actually block the video in some territories. So that may be a thing. Hopefully not. And I want to start out with someone who started off as a big hero of mine, ended up becoming a friend over the years, someone I still stay in touch with to this day, despite the fact that he lives thousands and thousands of miles away. And that's Gary Willis. And it's a tune from his album No Sweat from 96, 97, 1997. And this track is called Hymn, and HYMN. It's with Dennis Chambers on drums and Scott Kinsey on keyboards. Oh. And we're talking about that post Jaco Pastorius era of fretless bass. It was really hard for anyone to find a unique voice after that, and Gary doesn't sound anything like Jaco. That's what I love about this. It's so unique. And beautifully in tune as well. And of course, I'm linking to this playlist in the description below, so you can go and take the time, listen to all of these songs. Hopefully, I really recommend you listen to all of the albums that they're on, since we're only featuring 5 tracks from all of those albums today. So I will be interrupting a little bit to talk about what I think is important, at least what has been important to me about these songs. The writing right away is something that is massive on this, and the simplicity of it. yeah, it's okay. It's a ballad. It's a slow tempo. Perhaps you don't expect to hear a ton of density in there, but just the impact in the simplicity, I think, is what stuck out to me. And I think that'll be quite a running theme throughout these 5 songs, even though they're all very different and they're not all ballads. It's something I gravitate more towards the older I get, and something listening back to this stuff that I realized I was very much into, thankfully, from a young age, even though I've obviously been through those phases of mega chops and lots of notes and playing as fast as possible and doing all the things you do as a 20-something-year-old bass player with somewhat of a platform. And so I've had the opportunity to go do that, and to do that with artists as a sideman that encourage that, even to do that with my own band. I guess I encouraged myself, but the older I get, the more I'm getting away from that and sort of appreciating the simplicity. And that is really, I think, highlighted in a track like this. Just that big space they just left there, just the confidence and I also use that technique a lot as well with that with the kind of focus on beat 2. Listen to this. Where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Where is it? Oh, so I'm in the wrong place, but there's a part there where two, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. It's on the 1 and there, but just making the home, the destination, not exactly on the downbeat of the bar. I really like that, like some delayed resolution type stuff, whether that be harmonically or rhythmically. I like that rhythmic element where you sort of delay it a little bit, and that I use that in creating bass lines as well. That's not unique to writing. That kind of bleeds into my comping as well. And if you've got a good hookup with a drummer and you both sort of understand the task and are on the same page, you can really play with that, like not always coming out on the 1, sort of delaying the resolution. And let's listen to a tiny bit of the piano solo, because I think this is one of the biggest moments for me on the track, is how Scott Kinsey sounds. In fact, I'm going to, before we get to that, I'm going to, in real time here, get to Scott Kinsey's artist page and grab a song from one of his albums, maybe, and just sort of contrast what perhaps Scott is a little more known for. Yeah. Kind of busy, kind of synthy. And this is from his album Near Life Experience from 2016. The track is called Rave. Let me just scan through a couple of... let's see. Let's see. Where do we go? Yeah. So I kind of associate, I think of Scott as, and I've known him for a long time now, and we've played together a bunch, and I kind of associate that kind of electronic grooving, a lot of African influence, obviously from Weather Report and Zamanor, but then from pop and rock and kind of all coming together like that. Now, if we go back to the Gary Willis track and get to what Scott is playing on this record in 1997, it's some of the most beautiful piano playing I've ever heard. Yeah, just listen to the first part of the piano solo, really melodic. Anyway, go listen to the whole song yourself. The piano solo is beautiful. The bass solo is ridiculous. Maybe I'll leave that as a tease. Like, go listen to the bass solo. It's so beautiful, so melodic. This podcast will be 3 hours long if I go to every element of every song. This is really just a slightly deeper dive than the blog post, which you can go read, of course. And kind of continuing with that theme of bass players who hire great piano players. The second song in the playlist is a Stanley Clarke tune called What If I Forget the Champagne. It's from an album called East River Drive. I don't know the rest of the personnel on this track besides Stanley and the piano player, who is Kenny Kirkland, the immense Kenny Kirkland that you might know from Wynton Marsalis, Black Coats from the Underground, for instance. Great record. In fact, we should definitely contrast these. Let's see. I'll play you a little bit of that record just so you know like who this is and where he's coming from. This is in 1985. Which one? D'Alfer's Dilemma. That starts with a piano. Oh no, it doesn't. Where's Kenny? Okay, so that's Kenny with Wynton Marsalis. This is Kenny with Sting. He's on the Bring on the Night album and in the movie, of course, if you've seen that. And he plays When the World is Running Down, he plays the ridiculous solo. That's Omar Hakim on drums, that's Darryl Jones on bass, Kenny Kirkland on keyboard, Sting playing guitar on that record. If you don't know Bring on the Night, if that's not of your generation, I think it's probably on YouTube for free to watch. The movie, go stream the album, Bring on the Night live. It's a double album. It's ridiculous. I would say When the World is Running Down, Children's Crusade, Moon Over Bourbon Street, I Burn for You. I mean, there are just Tea in the Sahara. There are some amazing songs on there and amazing performances. They're all in from different nights, I believe. A lot of them are from the show in Paris, which I think was the first night of the tour, if I remember correctly. And then there's stuff from Germany, and yeah, it's just a really great record. But all of this to contrast where Kenny Kirkland's coming from. He has his own solo record, which is unbelievable. A massive catalog of sideman projects with just everyone you could possibly imagine. Michael Brecker is where I think I heard Kenny Kirkland first. Now we fast forward to East River Drive, the album, Stanley Clarke. The track is What If I Forget the Champagne. Immediately you kind of understand that it's Stanley with those harmonics. And of course when he plays the melody, now I don't know if he comped for himself on upright. I hear something that sounds like an upright. Could be programmed, could be a keyboard. I don't know. There are many options that it could be, but unmistakably Stanley Clarke when you hear the melody, probably on one of those piccolo basses. But it's here, like it's the simplicity of the melody note and the root note that really stuck out to me. This is something I've talked a lot about when it comes to people like Mike Stern. Actually, just when it comes to great composers, whether they're from 400 years ago or 40 years ago, the art of a melody note and a bass note, and really no need for anything in between to make something very impactful. You can hear that in action as it pertains specifically to our instrument, to the bass, guitar here and upright bass. Stanley's playing some chords, but here, one melody, one bass note. And when you add those strings in the background, that's like a nice, it's a nice dynamic change. But even without the strings and leading up to that, you could totally feel where the harmony was going. You knew whether the chord was major or minor or diminished or dominant or whatever it was with just the melody note and the bass note. You didn't need all that thickness and density to explain that to the ear. It was really, really easy to follow and quite beautiful. Then you add the strings and it's a beautiful orchestration element. And like I said, much like the last track, this one was about the writing for me and about that melody and bass note thing. And then it was really about hearing Kenny Kirkland, how he took that melody and how he took the form of this song to improvise. So we'll get to the piano solo. Oh, first there's a bass solo. I actually think this is some of Stanley's like cleaner and more pronounced playing on record. And I know there are going to be people in the comments that say, well, you know, you've got these 5 songs here and these 5 albums, these 5 artists. Like, what about, you know, Jaco Pastorius, Jaco, and Stanley Clarke's School Days, and then there's a list of like other legends that have made very impactful bass-led albums. And yes, absolutely, you're 100% right, and they have absolutely influenced me in a huge way. How could they not? You know, the first Jaco record is just, it's undeniable. It's sort of on the level of like, you know, if you look at trumpet records, you sort of have to take a few off the shelf. You have to take like, you know, Kind of Blue off the shelf because it just sits in a league of its own that will never really be surpassed, I don't think. And with saxophone, it's like, you know, maybe you got to take Giant Steps off there, or Love Supreme, or whatever it is, you know, things that are just on the Mount Rushmore that are sort of undeniable. So that's why I'm not talking specifically about those huge records that we all know and love and I'm sure have all been influenced by, no matter what style of music we play. That's why I picked these 5 that hopefully you haven't heard before. And if you have heard these albums, maybe you haven't heard these songs. And if you have heard these songs, maybe you haven't thought about them, perhaps in this way. That's really my only goal here with the podcast is to help people think and ask better questions. So yeah, let's get to Kenny's solo. Stand still, going. Here we go. Okay, for anyone who's not watching, for those of you only listening, like I cannot help but just constantly smile at this and get emotional hearing it again, you know, for the 50,000th time. It never gets old. All of these things go rushing through my head about, you know, we just listened to the Wynton Marsalis, Black Coats from the Underground, which was super swinging, and, you know, contrasted that with the Sting thing, the live pop rock solo, and then to this, which I don't know, I'm not sure how you even classify this. The common thread to me is that Kenny is always swinging, no matter what the context is, no matter what the framework is. The time and the sound are so ferocious. It's just unbelievable. And you can hear how he doesn't have to play complex. You know, even if you're not an improvising musician and maybe you don't understand harmony or your ear isn't that trained, what he's playing is deep on such a, I think, deep on such another level because of the time and the sound, not necessarily the note selection. Note selection, obviously a big part of it, but I think the connection to me was more about the time feel and the phrasing than anything else. And of course, I transcribed that solo. I played it thousands of times over and over again. Parts of that vocabulary are in my playing, or in my music for sure. We could spend an entire episode just on that solo, actually. So let's use that as a cue to say it's time for change, which is coincidentally, a little aside here, people often ask me, what are you thinking about when you play? Specifically, what are you thinking about when you improvise? It's a really common question, and a lot of people that when I say, well, hang on a second, what are you thinking about? And they say, well, I'm trying to remember my modes, or I'm trying to remember, what is the flat 9 on the dominant chord I'm playing, because I really like that sound. And they often come up with a long list of things that they're thinking about or attempting to think about whilst playing. And that's a very common answer. And it's common in people that haven't been doing it long enough, or maybe haven't actually been approaching it in a way that will help them be successful as an improviser. And when I answer the question, I always say I'm thinking of literally only two things. One is repetition and one is change. Now, we're talking specifically about improvisation here, not about whether I'm in a recording session, reading a bunch of music. There are other things going on there. There are things you have to think about and be aware of. It's not necessarily when I'm in a band situation as a musical director. Yes, I'm thinking about all kinds of stuff there, and I have to be aware. But this is really specific to improvisation, and obviously something we're listening to a lot in these bass records today. I'm thinking about repetition and change. I thought about it just listening to the Spotify playlist. I was like, you know what? We've had too much repetition here with this Stanley Clarke tune. It's time for a change. And had we not spent too long on it, and I'd be thinking about, we don't need to change here. We need to listen more to it. And that's exactly the same concept I take with me to the stage when it comes to improvising. When I have an idea, when I have a motif or something I'm trying to develop through the framework of the song, or the framework that we're improvising over, the form, if you will, I'm really thinking about, have we heard this too much? Do we need some change here? Or is this idea really untapped? Do we need to repeat it? Do we need to, modify it a little bit, but keep it in the same shape and keep it in the same range, for instance? Do we need to, so it's all about repetition and change for me. Just a little aside, because that's kind of how I do a lot of things in life, and how I just thought about this playlist. Next up is Charlie Haden. It's a very... how do you describe Charlie Haden? Maybe it's best not to. Maybe it's best to just play his music. This album knocked me off my feet when I heard it. I was living in New York when I saw the album announced. I think this was this 2003? 2002, this came out. So I'd been in New York a couple of years, and when I saw the lineup being Brian Blade, Michael Brecker, Brad Mehldau, Charlie Haden, plus strings, and I think Vince Mendoza is arranging some of it on there. I think there are 3 arrangers on the record. I was really, really like, what is this going to be? It did not disappoint. Just listen to the opening chords in the strings. I spent weeks and weeks just experimenting with these 2 chords. Crazy when you think about the history of Charlie Haden, when you think about the fact that he was a big part of Ornette Coleman's music. He played with Archie Shepp, with Alice Coltrane, with Keith Jarrett, with Alberto Gismonti, Paul Motion a lot. He led his own band for decades. When you think about that music, Keith Jarrett, You know, you think about some of the more out stuff that he did on Keith's records, but there's so much kind of Americana to me in his soul. It feels like, you know, and he has daughters, Lily. Is it Lily Hayden? And I forget all but they're all incredible musicians, and I believe there's some like Hayden family band recordings. I think I've heard that where they all sing in harmony, and it's very much that American folk music, like Americana kind of thing. And here he is on what would be very easily described as a jazz record, especially when you've got Brad Mehldau, Brian Blade, Michael Brecker, you know, and all these arrangers, and there's these voicings and these you know, chords that have little spicy elements to them. It could very much be described as a jazz record, but I hear Americana and that diatonic melodicism in there, which I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from this. Like when you hear me playing very inside, very diatonic, very melodic, there's normally an element of Charlie Hayden in it. And of course, all the other people in the band, they're all capable of playing all the notes and all the things and all the styles. And they do often. You know, Michael Brecker played basically everything there was to play during his life. But they all have this ability to get back to like a basic major scale and to triads and to simple melodies with bass notes. Of course, you can go back hundreds of years in musical history to classical and romantic. Just you go way back hundreds of years and listen to music, and you'll find pedal points. You'll find chords changing over a single bass note. I think where I entered my listening experience in my life was very much in sort of a jazz and a fusion and pop and that kind of world. I didn't enter immediately in the classical world because I was listening to what was on the radio. And maybe jazz came a bit later. So really it was like pop. But the first time I started to be aware of pedal points and of what you could do over the top of a pedal point and move those chords around were in albums like this, kind of more modern albums. Then I dug back into the history and looked at just all the amazing writing that went on using a pedal point, and all the incredible chordal players, whether they were chordal as piano players like a Brad Mehldau or Keith Jarrett or Herbie Hancock or Chick Corea or whoever it might be, or whether they were chordal in terms of their melodic choices, like a Wayne Shorter, who played so much, so many single notes, obviously as a saxophone player, but all based on triads and sort of vertical harmony rather than narrow linear ideas. So no matter which instrument it was coming from, doesn't necessarily have to be a traditional chordal instrument like the piano or the guitar. I think I became really aware of that with artists like this, with a Charlie Hayden, with a Wayne Shorter, and the list goes on. It's a beautiful album. That track is called American Dreams. The album is also called American Dreams from 2002. Highly recommend checking out the whole thing. It's so beautiful. It's made really well also. Like the mix and just the way the quartet blends with the strings. Phenomenal. Let's go to track number 4. It's Vic. Okay, so we don't even have to go that far in this because this stayed with me. This first chord, this major 7 chord, just stayed with me forever. Like the first time I heard this, I want to say this record was 97. Let me check. Show of hands. Oh, that was they don't have the date. They don't have the date because this is the reissue. Does it have the original? No, it doesn't. I think it was 90. I'm going to look that up just because I want to be factual with you guys. Victor Wooten, Show of Hands. Look at 96. I was wrong. See, it was released on February 20th, 1996. Wow, it's coming up for its 30th anniversary. That's incredible. So this record, that particular chord, and maybe this song is not one that most people, it's called The Vision. Maybe it's not one that a lot of people gravitate towards because there are like classical thump and there were like epic, slapping and tapping and all that stuff that was really like, holy crap, this is possible on a 4-string bass. That like that was the statement, one of the statements I think this album was making. But it was this little melody that just, man, I must have driven band leaders that I was working with, band members that were in my band at the time, completely nuts by trying to squeeze this in every opportunity I could. And playing that minor chord, that voicing. Yeah, everything about those first 18 seconds I tried to insert into everything I was doing. If there was a major chord and a relative minor hanging out in some way, I would try and make that happen, whether it was applicable or not. It's the kind of thing you do when you're 16 or 17, however old I was at 18, I don't remember, but yeah, very, very vivid and impactful memories of hearing that record for the first time. And it's kind of crazy that I would say A Show of Hands is one of the most important records I ever listened to as a bass player, and learned so much about it from it's tough to say band leader standpoint because there's really just Vic and some vocalists on that record, of course, but there's no real band situation. But from an artist perspective, like what is important. But the amazing thing to me is that I didn't go and try and make a solo bass record until, I made one. It came out in 2016, so that was 20 years after Vic's album. So I definitely didn't do that right away. And what I didn't do was gravitate towards all the slap and tapping stuff. Not because I couldn't do it technically, but because I think like Vic's melodic sensibilities and the thing I talked about earlier on about time and sound, the time and sound is really the most important part to me, the phrasing and that kind of stuff, because it's the most impactful. The technical vehicle in which that gets delivered, be it from the slapping and tapping side of thing or from the fingerstyle melodic thing, I think that gets overlooked a little bit sometimes, and people gravitate towards like, wow, that's really impressive because there's something technical that, it takes a heck of a lot of skill to do those things. When I say, I really should have clarified that. When I say I didn't do this tapping and the slapping thing, not because I couldn't do it, I can't do it. Let's throw that out there right away. It's also not. But it wasn't something I went after. I think I was confident in the fact that had I spent thousands of hours working on that specific technique, I could have achieved that skill set. It was really about the melody and the time and the sound that was kind of most inspired and just drew me into, I want to play these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to play those 5 notes. I want to make these pretty chords. And I think there are many examples in Vic's music of this, and not just in the playing, but in the writing also. If you pay attention, that I think I don't know, but I would guess they will have maybe a longer lasting impact than the technical facility he has brought to the instrument. I personally, selfishly, I really hope that is the case, because I think that the writing and the melody and the harmony and the stuff that Vic has offered us all is something that many people can play and that many people can access. And I think maybe the technical side of things is something that a very few people care to spend the time and become an exponent of. So I'm really hoping that the melodic side of things and the harmonic side of things, the writing side of things, is the long-lasting story that Vic leaves behind, as well as all the philosophical stuff and the fact that he's a very kind human being. I think we could all learn a lot from that. So yeah, I highly recommend, obviously, the whole album. I'm sure like 99% of everyone listening to this or watching this podcast has heard Show of Hands and all of Vic's catalog. You guys have probably heard most of these songs. I don't know. Maybe him and What If I Forget the Champagne, maybe those were outliers. Maybe the next one, from my friend, from my hero, from someone I obviously respect deeply on all levels, is John Patitucci. It's a tune from his 1997 album, One More Angel. It's the opening track. It's called Quasimodo. Check this out. Okay, let's contrast again. Let us remember that we are talking about John Patitucci. We're talking about one of the greatest bass players of all time. And we're talking about someone who, bummer. Let's see. I was hoping to make a very specific, example. Maybe this record will do it. How about this? So the contrast here, the example here, I think, is understanding that John is someone who's really well known, because I think the chick career element of John's career was such a huge thing for all of us to learn about John through, and has been, I think it's safe to say, a defining element of his career, and the output was immense. The dozens of albums that John was on with Chick, and in so many senses, I feel that it was very much a kind of on the grid situation. You really knew where the time was. A lot of the time it was with Dave Weckl, except for maybe, I think is there one album with Antonio Sanchez, and there's the Time Warp album with Gary Novak on drums. But for the most part, it was Patitucci and it was Dave Weckl, and very much on this grid. Chick often said it was one of his favorite trios to play with, favorite rhythm sections, felt kind of invincible playing with them, on top of them, underneath them, because that grid was so strong. And then we get back to the track we're listening to here, Quasimodo, with Paul Motion on drums. It couldn't be, to me, it couldn't really be more different. Maybe if you got Barry Altschul or someone, I don't know, they're probably more extreme example than that, but we have two pretty contrasting sounds and two very contrasting time feels between Dave Weckl and Paul Motion. And, oops, here we go. So I think I learned maybe a little bit of fearlessness from listening to stuff like this from John, and that feeling of like, oh, this is a bass player. This bass player is a band leader. This bass player is an artist. They do it from behind or standing next to the upright or the electric bass. They write and perform from the experience and from the pool of knowledge of being a bass player all these years. And they're not, John's not afraid to basically to do anything. I mean, you look at the drummers he's had on like on Imprint, for instance. There's Jack DeJohnette, Horacio El Negro Hernandez, Bill Stewart plays on Now. I mean, the list of drummers is just crazy. Adam Cruz here with Paul Motion, Dave Weckl, Vinnie Colaiuta. It's a pretty epic list and very varied list of drummers and, of course, piano players. It's just really, really crazy. Here's Alan Pasqua on piano, for instance. And then you think of so much of this trio with Danilo Perez is really defining, especially from the Wayne Shorter thing. Of course, Brian Blade. You know, when I talked to John in the interview, I think we talked a little bit about the fact that he's maybe played more gigs with Brian Blade than any other drummer, which is crazy, right? When you think of how long ago, Chick Corea, they started playing with Chick Corea with Dave Weckl and how many gigs they played and for how many decades, right up until Chick's passing a few years ago. So it's, kind of crazy, the range and the fearlessness. And that's what I got from that. And when you listen to my records, that is always what I'm going for. You know, like, we had Nico Vicaro, we had Cliff Armand, we had Jojo Mayer, Mark Juliana, like very, very different drummers. Peter Erskine, Morgan Agron. I'm trying to think, like, I know I'm missing people. Sorry. I've actually put out a bunch of records, so now I'm forgetting my own stuff. But you get the idea. That's always what I've tried to go for. And if you were to trace it back to a point of learning about that and understanding that, this would be a big part of that, would be this One More Angel record. Hugely impactful on me. I think maybe it was the first time I was really aware of Chris Potter as well. And here's another example of a bass player playing upright bass, laying down the foundation, writing this melody, and for Chris to play live, I'm guessing. And then I'm imagining that John overdubbed the melody with the 6-string, which is what we hear right here. Again, please go and stream this music, buy it on vinyl if you can, support all of these artists. This to me is where it happens. I think it's always been the focus of my life and my career to write and record music and put it out there into the world, but that has only been growing lately. We just finished mixing the first record that's going to come out. There's all these songs I found with Jojo Mayer, with Mark Juliana, with Justin Vasquez, Tim Miller, John Ellis. That's all done. It's in the can. I think it's 7 or 8 songs. We'll be putting that out within the next few weeks. Cannot wait for that. The duo album with Daniele Camarda is coming in the summer sometime, once we figure out which of the 20-something tracks we recorded we're going to put out. I literally talked to Ian Martin Allison this morning about working together on a project. So maybe that will be a 2025 thing. Maybe we'll just track it this year and put it out next year. I don't know. But yeah, that's what it's all about to me. There's kind of nothing more important. Appreciate you all hanging around this long and listening. Don't forget this 4th of July sales going on. A massive 30% off every order over $80 with the free shipping on the books, CDs, the vinyl, over a certain threshold. It's right there in the top bar of the store. It'll let you know your part of the world, what threshold you got to hit to get free shipping. I'm really happy to be able to do that. I know people want to buy 2, 3, 4 books sometimes, and when they do, they get the free shipping. And maybe you're really far away. You're in Australia, you're in New Zealand, you're in Japan, wherever you are. So I'm really happy to be able to offer that. And that's it. Everything's there. The harmony course, the books, the CDs, the vinyl, It's all there. The multimedia packages, don't forget about those. The multimedia packages are where you get a physical signed book and you get the digital book as well. So go check all of that out. It's linked in the description of the video. And please go listen to these artists and these artists' music. They're really kind of relevant to our instrument. And maybe you dig some of them, maybe you don't, but maybe it leads somewhere positive and you find and you discover something that keeps you curious. And if I leave you with nothing else today but this, it is to stay curious, to always ask better questions, and to let your curiosity be the biggest guide to whatever it is you do. All right, that's it. Catch you on the next one.